Welcome back into the GSMC Sports Podcast. We just finished up talking some MVP debate between Nikola Jokic and Luka Doncic. I guess I didn't even really get into SGA, who, again, the same sort of conversation about, yeah, he deserves to be talked about, but I don't think that he really does have the edge over Jokic. So if that's the direction you want to go in as well, again, let me know in the comment section what your arguments are. But I want to dive into the NBA action from last night, as again, we have some of these playoff positionings really shaping up, starting with the Mavericks here, as we just talked about them in depth a bit, at least in the last segment with Luka. Last night they faced off against the Miami Heat and came out on top in this one, thanks to a big-time first half from both Luka and Kyrie. Their offense was just dominant in this one and really got themselves out ahead of the game for Miami, gained as much as a 25-point lead, which for this Miami offense that we've seen has definitely been struggling this season, was just not enough to overcome as the game moved on here. And the like I said, Luka and Kyrie were incredible in this one. Daniel Gafford also played really meaningful minutes as well when he's hitting these hook shots and this crazy basket under the layup where he was falling backwards and got it to go. Very difficult to stop the Mavericks the way they're rolling. Gafford, by the way, on another one of these streaks of not missing a shot to rival Wilt Chamberlain. He went 6 of 6 last night. Believe he's up to 27 or something consecutive makes. Somebody, if you would like, can fact check me exactly in the comment section. But again, having another one of those runs, which is really incredible there. Miami's offense in this game just continues to look very pedestrian. And in the first half, if you look at this one, Tyler Hero and Caleb Martin were the only ones in double digits. Were really the only ones that showed up. But even that, I mean, you look at the final box score and Caleb Martin was very quiet in the second half. Tyler Hero wasn't his most efficient self. He was doing essentially what he could in this type of a situation. But this was also a very brutal game for Bam Adebayo, who about a month or so I gave out all NBA selections and I said Bam was definitely rivaling for one of those final spots, but he has not done himself very many favors based off of his offensive production as of late. He had a really tough game against Philadelphia a couple weeks ago, this one as well, and I just don't know how far defense is going to get you, and not even the, over-the-top defense statistical numbers. We know that Bam can cover 1 through 5 for the most part, be a very impactful player on that side of the ball, but that sort of reputation can only get you so far in what is a pretty competitive All-NBA class this year. I'm sure in the next week or so, probably once we have the final game conclude, I will be doing a segment handing out All-NBA selections, but this is a situation with a Miami Heat team that they're just sort of uninspired right now, and that's in large part due to the fact that the Heat have never really cared all too much about the regular season. But Jimmy Butler, again, I never want to sort of dump on him because we know what sort of levels he can bring his game up to when the moments call for it, but just very, very not... He's very passive right now in a lot of these games and doesn't take the level of aggression that we've seen from him in times. And in this game, he only took 8 shots, the least amount of shots by anybody in his team, in his starting lineup. Kevin Love had more shot attempts as well. And Miami did try and make this an interesting game based off of the third quarter, where Dallas's offense went cold. They were just sort of chucking up threes. They ended up shooting 44 in this game. Kevin Love and Tyler Hero were the main catalysts of this run from Miami. They got it within 10, as little as 8, and still Jimmy Butler was just sort of nowhere to be found as an aggressor. And it's not like he was, facing these heavy double teams, at least from what I saw, that was forcing him to pass out of it. I just didn't think that he really looked like he was engaged enough on that offensive side of the ball. And he's still a very good player, obviously, and one that I wouldn't want to face in the playoffs. But if you're putting a lot of stock into this Miami team, you do have to be worried about the level of aggression from Butler. And the regular season is wrapping up here. We will see him likely take it to another level once the playoffs come around. But the Heat have had a chance for the past couple of weeks to sort of sneak out of that play-in threshold, and they just haven't been quite as effective as you would have wanted them to be, where they're now sitting as the 8th seed in the East, and they're probably going to have to go on the road in that 7-8 matchup against Philadelphia, who is no slouch necessarily either. And if they lose that, I mean, it should be the Sixers and the Heat that make the playoffs out of the East. But again, the Heat are just putting themselves in a very risky situation with the way that they've been playing lately. What I will give them is the fact that Tyler Hero has been putting together some pretty impressive performances as of late. And again, that level of shot creation is something that they absolutely need. In his 4 games since returning from injury after missing over a month, he's averaging 23 points per game on 49-35 shooting splits. So that's definitely a positive. They've been without Terry Rozier for these past few games. We'll see how they sort of balance that, because those are their main 2 initiators right now. Obviously, Jimmy Butler can be, but he just hasn't been for a stretch here. But again, Miami, they're a scary team, but also if they flame out very quickly, it shouldn't be a massive surprise. Like we sort of alluded to with the Mavericks in the last segment, they are 16-2 in their last 18 games. Their chemistry seems to be at an all-time high during this Luka Doncic era, where it seems like he's the happiest he has ever been. A lot of people question the Kyrie trade last trade deadline, I should say, including myself, giving up first-round draft capital for somebody who has been lacking a real sense of buy-in. And I know that a lot of fans are saying, oh, well, Kyrie's always been this player. We know he's always been this level of a player, but was he actually going to be bought in on the situation? They were not a good team last year when they traded for him. And I mean, we saw a stretch. I don't have the actual numbers in front of me, so I don't want to get too in depth with it and, look stupid, but I forget exactly what number of games it was. It was something like 10, maybe 15 games consecutively that Kyrie played, which was the first time he did that since like 2017. Again, this is a statistic I've seen in a couple places that I'm just sort of trying to recall off the top of my head, but is just sort of a, smaller example of the fact that Kyrie has always sort of seen this level of attitude that has maybe not translated to a winning culture, and now he seems to be back in. There was a report on the broadcast last night that he sort of took accountability for some of the stuff last season, that he wasn't really ready to help defer more, and now he is bought in. Him and Luka seem to have a really nice connection there. That, like I talked about, he trusts Kyrie, but he trusts these other players as well. Daniel Gafford as the pick and roll threat. Derek Lively, who's missed the past few games, but he's a nice piece for them as well, that him and Kyrie are seeming to bring along. And they're going to play the Clippers now. It has been locked in. That will be their first round matchup. Some baggage there, as they have had that Luka versus Clippers rivalry. The Clippers have come out on top in both of those matchups. The playoff series, that is, against Luka's led Mavericks in the past, but Luka himself has been a mismatch problem. Going to be interesting to see how it plays out there. I also wanted to touch on very quickly here on the Bucks versus Magic game, where the Bucks were playing the second night of a back-to-back. This was their first game without Giannis, who of course went down with the calf strain in their game versus Boston the other night, and he's been ruled out for the final regular season games. Chris Middleton missed this one as well, but it was a lot of Bobby Portis in this one, ends up scoring 30 points in this game. And it was Damian Lillard as well, who has really stepped up every time that they haven't had Giannis this season. That does make for an interesting conversation for the Bucks and how they approach the postseason, where last night he puts up 29 points and 9 assists, was really masterful in the second half to close out this game and just help the Bucks cruise to victory. He is averaging 31.9 points per game on 48% from the field, 42% from three in the 7 games he's played without Giannis this season, which is significantly better than not just his scoring output, which is sort of a given, but his efficiency as well, with Giannis playing alongside him. In those Lillard and Giannis games, he is 23.6 points per game on 42-35% splits. We've seen Lillard at times this year sort of struggle to adjust to playing that second fiddle role after being the main event for his entire career. And maybe the Bucks do consider this as the playoffs begin in a couple weeks. Obviously don't want to do any long-term damage to Giannis. Both the Sixers and the Heat are absolutely tough first-round matchups, so I'm not saying rest Giannis, but if you feel like you can sort of skate by a bit by just riding the likes of Lillard and assuming he sort of has his confidence back headed into the playoffs, it's at least a conversation. Because again, Bucks are all in for a title this season, but you can't harm Giannis long term. Talked about this yesterday, the fact that a lot of fans are pointing to the fact that Kevin Durant dealt with a calf injury during the 2019 playoffs, and he tried to force his way back early, and as a result, we saw him end up tearing his Achilles that kept him out for his entire first season in Brooklyn. Absolutely don't want to see that with Giannis, who does rely very heavily on his athleticism. So I just thought I would throw that out there. Very quickly on the Magic here, it was a pretty disappointing loss for them yet again. They've suffered a couple of these losses where they've trailed by double digits for the majority of their game. This one against a shorthanded Bucks team, did so against the Rockets the other night. I love the way that the Magic have been able to step up this season, and they've been in contention for not just hosting a playoff series, but potentially even being a 2 seed. But it does seem like their offense just isn't at the level that it needs to be in terms of being a true contender. And this season was never about them being true contenders, so I definitely don't want to be anti-Magic here. It's much more encouraging that they were able to have the regular season success this season than sort of waiting another year and saying, oh, well, I like a lot of these pieces, but are they ever going to be able to actually capitalize on it? They've showed a lot of growth this year. That being said, I don't think that they have the legs on offense to really be able to push any of these teams. I wouldn't even say push, to beat a lot of these top tier contenders in the East. I think they can absolutely make a series difficult for anybody in the East, but I think I'm going to be very hard pressed to actually pick them in a series. We'll see where they end up matching up. A couple other rapid fire notes here. We got Trae Young's first game back from injury last night as the Hawks are trying to work their way into the play-in tournament. I mean, they're in the play-in tournament, but actually coming out of that and making the playoffs. Young played just 21 minutes last night, scored 14 points, dished out 11 assists. He was 5 of 5 from the field, which was nice to see the efficiency level. I wouldn't put too much stock into it. They did lose last night to the Hornets, where it was Miles Bridges putting them away with a layup as the game was ending. Got an awesome Brandon Miller game here. We had posters. We had some big-time shots from him. He just does continue to impress, and I'm definitely, not that I was here at the GSMC Sports Network when that draft was happening, but I was definitely Team Scoot over Team Miller at the time, and I was wrong in that case, and it's been a lot of fun to see. Finally, last notes here. The Suns end up winning by 16, so it doesn't look quite as bad as it felt during the moment, but these were the two teams playing one another for the second consecutive night. The Clippers just ran the Suns out of the building the other night. We're up by 33 at half. Suns did make it a little closer down the stretch, but Clippers were able to close it out. The Clippers rested 5 of their top 6 players in their rotation in Harden, George, Leonard, Zubats, and Powell. And last night started Bones Highland, Trey Mann, Terrence Mann, that is, Amir Coffey, PJ Tucker, and Miles Plumlee. And last night, the Clippers pushed them all the way to the end. Bones was terrific in this game. That does sort of continue to... it's Mason Plumlee, by the way. I can't believe I just messed that up. But the... Bones was incredible in this game, ends up scoring a career high 37, 15 of 29 from the field. He is just so shifty, and he does continue to show that he has this scoring ability that hasn't been fully tapped into just yet. Maybe for lack of opportunity, but also a little bit lack of playing in a real team-friendly game. But last night dishes out 9 assists as well. He and BJ Boston as well, also known as Brandon Boston, but they were both really effective. Both scored career highs in this game, and this was a little bit concerning for the Suns. Again, they end up winning, and today doesn't really mean all that much, but they were really struggling for a lot of this game. Grayson Allen has been on a big-time slump for them as of late. They're going to need him to actually step up if they want to have a chance in the postseason. A very top-heavy team. Allen's actually coming off the bench nowadays. Royce O'Neal got the start over him. So, again, Suns can't overreact because they end up winning, but definitely did not seem very promising for a lot of last night. And the Suns, as they head into the postseason here, I definitely don't feel great about them sitting as the 7th seed. So, you know, they can definitely beat the Kings, and they do definitely have sort of the ceiling of reaching their full potential with the scorers of Durant, Booker, and Beal, but it has not looked pretty for them for a lot of this year, and I did not think it did last night either. But we are going to be taking our final break here, and when we come back on the other end, I want to talk some MLB and the debut of Jackson Holiday. So we will be getting into all of that right after this break, so stick with us.